watch videos. Just make sure I am live. Alright. Awesome, let's go.
Ever since the Second World War, the United States...
It's probably a little too loud, but you know what, I'm just gonna... Let's see, desktop audio.
has been an unparalleled...
Pretty loud compared to me, so I'm gonna turn it down.
...world power. And ever since the Cold War, the U.S. was the unparalleled political, cultural, economic, and military hegemon. Add in the U.S. is historically one of the most...
I'm gonna test that out, see how that sounds. Just cut it all off.
Ever since the Second World War, the United
How's
States...
that? That's way better. Okay, I should have just moved my thing. Alright. Let's see. Good. Okay. Alright, and desktop audio.
...stable and richest countries in the world.
It's about the same.
Just makes the current situation even more bizarre.
Testing.
The U.S. seems to be seething with internal...
Alright, let's see how that sounds. Okay, you can't go back on Twitch, so. Alright, let's hear. Okay. Turn it up a little bit more. How's this?
Just makes the current situation even more bizarre.
Testing. Okay.
Situation.
How's this?
Just makes the current situation even more bizarre.
Okay, that sounds good. Alrighty then. Let's begin. Okay, so this is me. I'm Smiley P. I'm just gonna react to shit. Okay, let's go.
Ever since the Second World War, the United States has been an unparalleled world power. And ever since the Cold War, the U.S. was the unparalleled political, cultural, economic, and military hegemon. Add in the U.S. is historically one of the most stable and richest countries in the world. Just makes the current situation even more bizarre.
Let's turn on
The U.S. seems to be seething with internal division and hatred. Its economic and social systems seem fundamentally broken, while it proves quite inept at acting on an international scale. Meanwhile,
I don't have, there's no subtitles? That's kind of annoying.
While American culture seems to degenerate, with artists like Lil Pump getting #1 hits, and with farting into a microphone seen as real.
Okay, degenerate? Alright, whatever, bro.
Music. On every level, it's like Lil Pump
getting
division and hatred.
So there's anarchists being kicked by, I'm assuming, white supremacists over here. Racist, afraid again, yeah, Black Lives Matter, so there's got the good guys over here on the right, and the bad guys on the left. That's usually
the social systems seem fundamentally broken, well, it proves quite inept at acting on an international scale.
Yeah, right, well, we constantly trying to stick our fingers in everybody's pie. We're not doing a very good job. We're just pulling out of Afghanistan now and making things even worse. You know, not that we were doing anything good in Afghanistan to begin with, but, you know, we're really, it's kind of a no-win scenario, unfortunately, because America sucks.
Culture seems to degenerate, with artists like Lil Pump getting #1 hits, and with farting into a microphone seen as real music.
Hilarious, haha, you're so cultured. Because you don't like the kids' music.
On every level, America seems to have lost its way. This video is here to...
What is this? What is... No, I gotta
use
blah, 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 you... The kids! Ah, those damn kids! Alright, let's see. The direction of the country. Would you say things are on the wrong track, generally headed in the right direction? So, it's pretty much a, you know, reflection of each other, and, yeah. So, things aren't looking so great. At least you agree with that on public opinion.
On every level, America seems to have lost its way. This video is here to talk about how America reached its current state, what it means, and where it could be going. Again, this is just my opinion. An opinion backed by a lot of research, but you can take it...
Yeah, but I can already tell that I don't think I'm going to completely agree with your opinion. I might agree with a lot of, you know, the facts, but we'll see.
Or leave it. I would like us to refrain from picking one name...
My opinion also is different than his. Hold on. I shouldn't say right off the bat that I think we're going to disagree on everything.
Opponents to
We'll
blame
see.
everything on. It's so easy to say that the right, left, Jews, Illuminati,
Yeah, exactly.
Reagan, Obama, or capitalism, etc., are to blame for all the nation's ills.
I'm getting the feeling I think this guy might be a horseshoe theorist, which is the problem.
This is
And
so
I have a
appealing
video
since
on
it
that if you
appeals to
wanna check that
tribalism
out.
and makes it appear as if someone is in fact in control. Well, all the evidence from history points to all the players in every era of history being deeply compromised by factors entirely out of their control.
Okay, so yeah, the systems. I agree.
Putin,
Systems are
Trump,
the problem.
Biden, and Xi are all bitterly struggling against a world they don't fully understand that's continually giving them bad options.
Plus, the problem is, capitalism and the fake communism of China, who claims to be communist but isn't anything close to communism because they are not a stateless, classless, moneyless society based on democracy and mutual aid. So, for one thing, they have money and a state, and there's no democracy, and I don't see much mutual aid. Very authoritarian. That's a nice opening. An ego trip in which I vomit my reading list back onto you. Fair enough.
Before we start, we live in a very complex era, one rich in
True.
misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult to keep track of all the cross currents happening now, and it's easy to get
Yep.
stuck on clickbait news that doesn't focus on the real undercurrents.
That is absolutely true. That's why I don't spend a lot of time on social media.
Which is why I find geopolitics so
Uh-oh. We alright? What happened? Whoa.
So anyway,
Whoa. I don't know what just happened. Eat if you're hungry. Okay, don't know what happened there.
ever since the Second World War, the United
Yeah. Let's see, where
getting
were
number
we?
one hits in continental struggle, which will shape the years
Okay.
in the real.
Yeah, so
It's difficult to
clickbait.
keep track of all the cross currents happening now, and it's easy to get stuck on clickbait news that doesn't focus on the real undercurrents, which is why I find geopolitics so fascinating. I was in fact watching a very interesting documentary about US-Chinese relations called China versus USA, Empires at War, which
It's not a bad idea. I'll check that out. What is it on?
talked about the
Is
brewing
it
conflict
on-
between the US and China.
Was it on Curiosity Stream? I wonder. Let's see. Curiosity Stream. What was it called? China vs. USA. Empires at War. See if I can search without logging in. No. Damn. Have to look it up later.
Relations called China versus USA, Empires at War, which talked about the brewing conflict between the US and China, a multi-front, multi-continental struggle which will shape the years to come in more ways than we can count. I was able to watch this show on Magellan TV, a documentary
Magellan.
service
Okay,
with
yeah,
a rich.
this is his ad.
It's
Alright.
compatible with basically
Congratulations. Now back to the video. Demographic reasons. Okay.
I'm going to take a theory from the brilliant historian Peter Turchin here. He wrote a book called Secular Cycles, using 4 European countries as a model, saying that they go through multi-century demographic cycles that affect practically every element of the society, whether on an economic, cultural, or political basis.
I
He
do
then
agree
wrote
that
a book
cycles
called Ages
happen,
of
yeah.
Discord that applied the same theory to the United States. The theory goes something like this. There's an era of stability in which the population and
Yes,
economy
empires
grows.
rise and
As the process
falls.
goes on
That's
long
actually
enough,
true.
the value of labor itself goes down, as there are simply more people. This drives down the wage of
Makes
the working
sense.
man. At the same time, as wages
Of course, wages are also part of the
stagnate,
problem.
the people with
because
money for
private
investment
property,
or organizational ability are able to
business
do much
property,
better, which means the size of the
Working
upper
people
class
for a
swells.
wage is a problem.
This then results in greater inequality between capital and labor. As the
Mhm.
upper class grows and the working class is pushed towards
Yeah.
subsistence, the pressure to get into the elite swells, and the pie inevitably reaches its limit, which results in differing factions among the elite. What normally happens is that some horrifying demographic crunch, like a major war or plague, happens which shrinks the amount of the working classes, which results in their wage growth. Which means that the upper classes
that's
and their
true.
bloated number can't support themselves,
It
which
makes
results in the
sense, yeah. Roman Republic, early, let's see, demographic crunch, the Roman Civil War, yeah, that's true. I
upper
like
classes
that.
turning on each other.
This is the abstracts, for example, America's 1970, 90 to 1930 cycle was peculiar in many ways.
A civil war or some foolish expansionary
because
war.
we made a lot
America
of money
went
off
through one
of
these
World War
cycles
One
before,
and Two.
turning
and
around
didn't
in
get
1930, from which the
destruction
quality of
out
life for
it.
the average working man started to go
a
up
lot of
dramatically.
domestic
This process ended around
conflict.
1970, in which a series of demographic factors started to depress working wages. This was mainly the introduction of larger numbers of women and immigrants to the workforce.
Yeah, I mean, and also the fact that, you know, that's the graph of, yeah, well, this is the supply and demand graph, but around 1970, that's when, until then, production and wages went up kind of together, but after that, production started going up, but wages started stagnating.
Which produced a larger labor supply.
Not
was
this
compounded
graph,
by America's
though.
population nearly doubling since the 1950s
although
due to
it's, you know, the supply of, I guess, workers and demand.
growth. Competition with foreign imports started around 1970, also depreciated American working wages. I'm not
This
saying
is when
a
we
bad
started
thing.
moving
Countless
production overseas to China.
women
and
who would have
too.
been forced into strict gender roles and immigrants who would have lived out lives in autocratic, corrupt, and anti-growth countries got opportunities to live much more fulfilling lives, bringing their talents, imagination, and grit into the American system. However, from an economic basis, this is just true. The correlation between immigration and lowered wages in American history is
Immigration
far
is
too
generally
close.
inverse of well-being metrics. Really, immigration, as far as I know, generally helps people. It helps countries. Summary of labor dynamics. Graph plots together standardized variables reflecting the fluctuations in labor supply and various proxies of well-being. Let's see. So, immigrants is the solid black line, so they went down and then they go up. Wage, yeah, so wages go up with immigrants, it would seem. Wage is the, this line, so that goes, yeah, that seems to correlate with, higher immigration. Height, that's an interesting statistic, so that's that's dash dash dash. Interesting. It's hard to keep track of all of these. Life expectancy, but what is the average? So average of everything, but it doesn't. So wages go up with immigration going up. So that's interesting. That's kind of the opposite of what he says. Immigration is generally the inverse of well-being metrics. What are you talking about? The immigration is the solid black line, and it basically follows everything. So immigrants are here, wages coming up, right? Because the wages are the dash dot dot. So dash dot dot goes up. Immigration falls. The wages are falling. And then the wages kind of aren't related, because it looks like there's not a lot of immigration, but wages sort of have an up. And then they start to correlate pretty heavily with the wages on this graph, with wages and immigration. It's a lot of lines, so it's kind of difficult to see, but the solid black line kind of sticks with this average line here, this sort of thicker gray line. And as you can see, the wages is almost always above that line and goes up with it. Now it goes down here as we are losing immigrants, which is interesting, towards 2000. And also, yeah, this is from 1780 to 2000, so this is a very long time.
People like to say that immigration doesn't lower wages since the immigrants work jobs that Native Americans don't want to, but that doesn't consider that those jobs are not attractive.
But you just showed us a graph that shows that wages do go up with immigrants. That's
between immigration and lowered wages in American history is far too close. People like it's true. The correlation between immigration and lowered wages in American history is
correlation between is literally, you literally have a graph proving the opposite. If anything, yeah, the immigration it's almost 1-to-1, except not really, but it's almost like 1.5 to 1 wherever the immigrants are, besides in the beginning and in the end. But throughout from about 1820 to 1960, there's always wages are just above the level of immigrants. It's not really great. They don't correlate exactly, but wages is almost always above immigration levels.
Too close. People like to say
And
that immigration doesn't
above.
lower wages since
Not
the
very
immigrants
high
work
above.
jobs that Native Americans don't want to, but that doesn't consider that those jobs are not attractive to Native Americans since the wages are depressed by the immigrant supply. Similarly,
When he says
80%
Native
of
Americans, does he mean like American Indians, or does he mean I assume he means people who live in America, who were born in America, which is true. That's actually what a Native American would be, but when you say Native Americans, usually, people born in America would be a more clear statement if that's what he meant.
revenue gained by women.
I'm not again arguing against women in the workforce. I would hope not. I don't see why that would do anything anyway. Or immigration. The more workers, like, the better. We can get more jobs done. The problem is wages are just artificially controlled, basically. They want the business owners want wages to go down, and the business workers, having a surplus of workers could be a great thing, and it doesn't need to affect wages. It's just that you could put wages down by having a surplus of workers, which is pretty not cool.
During the workforce was lost by paying for the role women did as housewives, with significant amounts being lost in food
That being said, domestic unpaid, house labor is important too, like raising kids and everything. It doesn't, the quote unquote traditional feminine jobs of domestic work is important and often unpaid too, and so that should be which is why babysitting and stuff is a great thing.
Reduction in childcare. This is why the two working households of today often have worse standards of living than single-income households of several decades ago. On the positive side, this resulted in a revolution.
I don't even know if that's true, dude, because your graph was wrong. It proved the opposite of what you're saying.
And cuisine starting in 1980, with Americans eating out more. This was compounded by moving industrial jobs overseas, which shrank the supply of middle-class jobs,
problem.
which meant that
Yes,
the demand for stable work couldn't keep up with the labor pressures, which is why
I think that this is true. That yes, the shift from much more so than immigration and women joining the workforce, I think that that's just ridiculous. But absolutely, the moving of industrial working, middle class, blue collar work overseas, that was a huge reason to that depressed wages. That's
wages
more
have
than
stagnated
anything.
since 1970,
Yeah.
while productivity
Yes, this
has gone
is
up.
the graph I was talking about. Productivity, when I said production, I meant productivity going up, while right around 1970, we were basically 1-to-1, and then it just stopped at 1970. The hourly compensation stayed basically the same, while productivity basically linearly increased.
By more than 70%. Meanwhile, the number of millionaires in America has quadrupled since 1980. As the life of the working man has become less pleasant and the opportunities among the elites have gone up, there's been immense pressure to get into the...
Because lower class jobs are not really, big in America, but business, high class, jobs went up really well. Like high paying ownership, opportunities increased, but, actual working, like industrial work and assembly line, I can't think of the word, but like production houses work went overseas to China, and that's why China had such a boom.
Elite. This is why the price of a college tuition has gone up so radically, since colleges can charge exorbitant prices to get a shot.
And that's the other thing too, is colleges completely could be just colleges could be free. There's no reason to charge for colleges. It does not benefit education, and it does not benefit people in any way. The only people that benefit from charging tuition for colleges are the people, like the board members of those colleges, the people who make the most money from that tuition, which are not the teachers and are not the staff. It's often the shareholders and owners of the school.
Getting into the elite.
So it really makes no
difference.
difference.
Medical bills in which exorbitant.
There is so much statistics that say education should absolutely and could absolutely be free through taxes and things. And anyone who says otherwise is just mistaken and propagandized or lying.
High medical bills supported by the taxpayer,
including this guy, I think. However, all he's saying is that because colleges are expensive. Well, let's see. He said that colleges went up.
Millionaires in America has quadrupled.
I wish there were subtitles.
1980. As the life of the working man has become less pleasant and the opportunities among the elites have gone up, there's been immense pressure to get into the elite. This is why
there's always pressure to get into the elite if there's an opportunity, but there's hardly any opportunity, even though, they say, there's the sort of stereotype of America and the capitalism. The lie they want to tell you is that anyone can make it, but it's really not true. You have to, especially when you widen the divide and get rid of the middle class. When you increase opportunity in the elite, and move all the opportunity to change, then it's only the people who are kind of have the opportunity to be in the elite that get any of the benefit.
The price of college tuition has gone up so radically since 1980. As the life of the working man has become less pleasant and the opportunities among the elites have gone up, there's been immense pressure to get into the elite.
And the best way to do that is college.
Why the price of a college tuition has gone up so radically since...
Exactly, because everybody wants a college degree, because there are no middle class, uncollege, blue collar jobs anymore. And the fact that we charge for college at all, because you could charge for college, they charge a lot more because now the only chance to get a job at all, because again there's no middle class production jobs, is to get a college degree, and then everyone has a college degree.
Colleges can charge exorbitant prices to get a shot.
When we literally don't need. When if single payer colleges, government subsidized education, making it free for everybody to learn anything they want would be so much better, because then everyone could be educated and everyone could get the job that they need, and opportunities would be available to everyone.
Getting into the elite.
And thus
a similar
they would pay more
process is seen
taxes
with medical bills, in which exorbiantly high medical bills, supported by the taxpayer under many
And
circumstances,
again, medical bills completely unnecessary. Again, any other, you look at any other developed country besides the U.S. and their medical, they have some form of universal health care.
way of supporting.
And the more universal it is, the better. The places with more NHS and everybody, like the NHS is okay, they're pretty good, but Canada is pretty good, but you think of the more socially democratic nations like the Nordic regions, they have pretty much, although not everyone, the problem is mental health care is not included. That's a big thing, but in terms of non-mental health care related things, the more you allow universal healthcare, the better your outcomes are, and the healthier your population is, and the more working people you have, because they're not disabled for whatever reason, because they and they're not in debt.
This is compounded by David Hackett Fisher's Great Wave theory of historic cycles of inflation, which I covered in a previous video, in which, due to worldwide...
This whole video is just why America is crazy, but not including capitalism. Just all these, results of capitalism being the problem, without actually naming the problem as capitalism.
Population growth and growing international competition.
Because he's a horseshoe theorist. He thinks that both sides are authoritarian, and that more government is the only way to change things. And I was saying taxes are important, but the other big thing is to obviously get rid of private ownership and move it more into worker ownership and collective ownership. Why have everybody benefits from everybody having a democratic, share. Workplace democracy would be an amazing boon to America, and bring us closer together and everything, because those on the right and the left who aren't, rich, but, just people who are just the average person, who are either, really strong one way or the other, usually it's between liberal and right wing. The far left is usually a lot more online people, but your average sort of older generation is either usually very liberal or very right wing, which is not very helpful, because they still believe that they don't understand that the problem is capitalism, when we should create more workplace democracy. If we gave more workplace democracy, though, those people, the average people, no matter whether they're very liberal or pretty far right wing, if they had workplace democracy, they would probably understand a lot more and be more involved and feel more in control of their lives, because they are. And that would sort of bring us closer together as well, because we would realize that we all want the same thing, which is stable, work that pays a living wage and isn't miserable, so that our children can have a better life than us. And then we can start tackling things like climate change and education. Starting with workplace democracy,
over
that would
the last
be an
2
excellent place
decades,
to start,
the world's
along with
has grown to unprecedented.
universal education and healthcare. Especially, I guess, starting with Medicare for all would be a great thing. But we really want Medicare for all, like universal healthcare, universal education, and workplace democracy.
Rates. This is as governments inflate their currencies to keep maintaining their same
incredibly
operating costs as the cost of living goes up.
So much.
This is part of
so much to fix, the things about the cost of living going up. It would fix everything. If most jobs that you could get were paid a living wage, then people would be able to afford living, and then they would, be able to spend money into the economy and get the economy going again. Now, I, as a, anarchist who doesn't like money at all, I still see the value in, creating social democracy for the meantime as a, first step to moving into socialism, and which is the between of communism and capitalism, the true between, because it's socialism is a pretty wide term, which includes social democracy, which is still capitalistic because we still have private property and ownership, but we have workplace democracy. The more workplace democracy we have, we could still have owners with co-ops, but we need very powerful co-ops and unions, and then to minimize the amount of private ownership as possible, and then of course, in addition to, growing strength within unions and business co-ops, things like universal health care and education, and of course better housing, public housing things too. We just and all of this could be done so easily. The U.S. government is literally just choosing not to. I'm saying it like it's funny. It's really not. It's sad. There is enough taxes to just do it basically overnight. But the Republicans cannot do it, and most Democrats are just blue Republicans anyway. So the only people actually willing to try this are the progressive Democrats, and there's still relatively few of them. And we have people like Joe Manchin, who is literally, his only job is to be a spy. He's just a Republican who calls himself a Democrat so that he can obstruct democracy from the Democratic side.
Long international population cycles that affects the whole world that should be cresting soon. I cover this in my video on Why is the World Crazy Now? These population pressures are not an American-only issue, but are affecting most of the world. Another common side effect of these cycles is rising governmental debt. This is partially to support a swelling elite with government jobs, which is one way to view the massive government outlays spent on healthcare and student debt.
But government debt is paid for in a good economy. You have the only thing that creates a lot of, the best way to get the government out of debt is to, create opportunities for people to make money and then charge them taxes with a progressive tax structure, so that we can, the more money you make, the higher that money is, in levels paid. So that, but lower end people don't get paid, like they get the tax cuts. The higher our wage earners, the higher net worth people get the higher percentage of taxes based on their amount of money, as in, $100,000 gets, a different tax than $99,000. But, if you make $100,000 a year, if you make $101,000 a year, it's only that one extra dollar that gets, taxes $100,000. Everything else is paid in its level. I don't need to explain progressive tax. That's how it works. The more money you have, you get taxed, but only on that money that's over that limit. Any money that doesn't reach that limit is taxed less. So you don't move all of your money into a new tax bracket just by making more money. You just get, just the money over that limit gets taxed that way.
And could also view government bailing out industries in a similar light.
Bailing out industries, but not then putting those money into wages. That money, that creates a lot of debt. Bailing out the banks and stuff, but then keeping that money in the banks and not in the economy, because then it doesn't get taxed and then it doesn't go back into the government. So it's just, that creates a lot of government debt. So the order way to pay it off is to just have a good economy. A good economy erases government debt, because you get to pay off all those, taxes and everything, and then you actually get to do it. Apparently you can get famous if you buy followers from Zero T Thumper. I wonder if I can report them on Twitch. Oh well, I can't. Anyway, thanks for the comment, bot.
The U.S. reached a low point of political polarization in recent times in 1950. Since then, and especially since 2000, political instability has reached a fever pitch.
Because we went neoliberal in the 70s and 80s, and it was just Reagan and Nixon. It was just terrible because, again, we just were absolutely against any progression in capitalism and moving, even towards the center, let alone the left. And it's just
several factors go into
terrible.
This. A primary one being the conflict of the
capitalism is causing all these problems. How do we fix it? More
the
capitalism.
Democrats' main
Less
aim seems
taxes
to be
on
to
rich
place people with college degrees in as much power as possible.
All right, let's see what he's saying. I wish there were subtitles.
Recent times in 1950. Since then, and especially since 2000, political instability has reached a fever pitch. Several factors go into this. A primary one being the conflict of the elites mentioned above in the Turchin thesis. The Democrats' main aim seems to be to place people with college degrees in as much power as possible.
Yeah, I don't understand what that's supposed to mean. Pays people with college degrees in as much power as possible? Like, they're all in debt. How could they be in power?
In an economic sense, this is through greater government regulation, intervention by people.
This guy is definitely a neo-libertarian who just wants privatization and doesn't like the government.
Who use their educational credentials.
Which is a shame, because he is clearly interested in history. Surely he should understand, and world history, that surely he should understand that in order that, leftist economics correlate with and cause rise in life standard of living and everything, in good life, you know, for
against
many
capitalists
people.
who
It's
became
crazy
rich through
that
the market.
a person who studies history wouldn't notice that.
Similarly, on the cultural level, professors who have studied sociology, gender, race, queer theory, etc., are expected to determine moral behavior rather than the traditional
Yeah, this
role
guy
in
just doesn't like SJWs and libs, you know. I mean, the problem isn't yeah, liberals are a bit weird, and you know they're putting too much, you know, sociology into society when we should, you know, attack systems and not, you know, no, we don't need these Robin DiAngelo you know, anti-white courses. We need to just invest in lower income communities and create, you know, get the economy going in those places. Like, low income communities are low economic development communities, which, you know, are just a drain on society. So we need to just invest in them and get them going more. But, you know, instead we're just blaming SJWs and liberals, you know, who take it a little too far in the other wrong direction. And it, you know,
military and police organizations.
It's like, oh, these SJWs just want us to erase our whiteness, so let's cut taxes on the rich. Like, what?
In which people are promoted based off their talents.
I mean, at least the liberals are kind of on the right track, but the real thing is to just, again, you know, tax people appropriately and use those taxes to invest in communities and infrastructure, and you'll have a much better society.
In said field, or the old boys club, should be replaced by social workers who gain their credentials based off their theoretical work. George Friedman, in his book The Storm Before the Calm, correctly, in my opinion at least, described this group as a technocracy, or rule by experts. The Republican coalition is effectively all the other.
I mean, a rule by experts doesn't sound like a bad idea, but you have to. It just depends on how many experts there are and in what fields are they expert of. Like, are you putting an expert of, you know, Arbery in charge of, you know, the economy? That's not great. An expert in political and you know, the history of philosophy isn't going to necessarily be great at economics, but. You know, you put people who are studied those things in those
businessmen
positions.
Who gain money through being skilled at the market, religious figures who pull on traditional value systems, military elites, etc.
So political, yeah, solid liberals is the most left it goes. This is the problem with this horseshoe theory, single, you know, one-dimensional left-right spectrum. Opportunity Democrats. What do these even mean? Disaffected, devout, and diverse bystanders. You know, centrists. But all these people are centrists. Even these solid liberals are basically centrists. They're just critiquing everything but capitalism, which is the problem. But private ownership and lower taxes on the rich is creating all of these issues.
This effectively unites
unregulated
a disparate confederacy
corporations.
Between libertarians and evangelical.
Yes, they have a lot more physical space compared to, you know, the other map, which was the so-called, you know, elites in the cities, because the cities are much more densely populated. You know, it looks like it's like 90% of the U.S. compared to the other, of the contiguous U.S. compared to the other map, but it's also like 10% of the people.
That would otherwise have little in common.
90%, you know, the 10% of the U.S. on the other map, all the cities, is like 90% of the people.
The government, which lets them maintain their pre-existing influence, except in narrow and specific interests.
Yeah, let's see. So, wait, let's see what he says there. Does he even get neoliberalism correctly? Okay, yeah. So, points where Republicans break their own anti-government position. Again, yeah, because Republicans aren't anti-government. Yeah, for evangelicals, policing morality and abortion. For neoliberals, which at least he understands is a Republican side, bailing out big business, absolutely, instead of bailing out the community and the people. And for national security types, large military spending and wars. Yeah, exactly. That's very, yeah. It's horseshoe theory. This guy is just a horseshoe theorist.
Which lets them maintain their pre-existing influence, except in narrow and specific interests.
You're forgetting about you're just not critiquing capitalism. You're just thinking that everybody is... you're just thinking extremism is authoritarianism. These are not,
polarization started to go into overdrive with the Reaganite counter-revolution, in which the right stopped.
But I do agree at the beginning when he said that misinformation is the main problem, and this guy, unfortunately, is part of the problem.
Stopped accommodating the left and took a more free market stance. For decades afterwards, the right took the stance that any compromise with the left would weaken their cause, which resulted...
Which is, again, yeah, the polarization comes from the right being, you know, idiot, pearl-clutching snowflakes who just can't do anything if the Democrats say anything, and the Democrats aren't left. They're just centrist. So it's the right moving further away from the center.
The left, growing frustrated with the success of the Reagan counter-revolution, decided to gain power through
social justice, ageism, you know, all these things.
Cultural means. This is where social justice comes in. The left has gone very far left in the last decade.
No, the liberals have gone very liberal in the last decade. The center has gone, instead of critiquing capitalism, it's just, they want to make rainbow capitalism. They think that putting a rainbow or a heart on their, corporation as they dump into the river and refuse loans to trans people, they think that that'll make it okay. It's just not.
You can think this is a positive move, and that's fine, but imagine posting these popular left-wing opinions 10 years ago. Nearly all left...
The police should no longer use force, and crime should be solved almost entirely by long-term social programs. I mean, that's pretty true. I think the police force should certainly pull back on their lethal force, and they absolutely should. Yeah, so I think that one's correct. Let's see, black people should be given reparation payments for slavery. Perhaps not directly, but I think that the defund the police and long-term social programs should be how reparations are done for people, systematically hurt by, the past and white supremacy and the patriarchy and everything. That people should announce their gender identity publicly, while 99.9% of the population still identified with their presumed gender. I think putting pronouns in your bio isn't a bad idea. This guy is saying that this is why, so far the first three of these are just, characterized badly, but they really are not that bad. Gender and sex are entirely divisible, and there are at least 64 genders. Gender is a spectrum. That number is completely arbitrary. Gender and sex are different. Sex is biological. I mean, gender is also a biological, but gender is a form of personal identity. Do you feel more feminine or more masculine, to the point where you feel like you should be the opposite sex, or or you're also there's only really 3 points on the spectrum. There's masculine, feminine, and non-binary in the middle, where you kind of feel like both at the same time or neither. Every element of society should have perfect gender and racial equality of outcome. Nope, that's not true. We want equality of opportunity, not outcome. Ignoring the demographics of the occupational inputs and this is just more Jordan Peterson crap. This is just the globalists and the neo-Marxists and everything. All that stuff. That every academic field, whether English, science, history, etc., should be primarily devoted to the study of oppression. No, that's absolutely not true. Things should be, history should be viewed through the lens of oppression, but it can also be viewed through a lot of other lenses. It's just that we also have to add that one too. And also, yes, people should be taught in a way that benefits everybody, and isn't just focused on getting the right answer, but learning how to think critically and understanding and think for yourself, rather than just get the right answer on a test. That's, again, that's a good thing too. That schools should teach that Western civilization and the United States are inherently oppressive organizations. I mean, yeah, again, this is just save the West bullcrap. This is I'm sorry, dude, this is just not very you're just missing the point, man. This is just anti-SJW skeptic, quote, skeptic crap. But again, the first three weren't too bad. They're just, worded wrong. The fourth one is alright, but worded very wrong because it uses an exact number instead of a spectrum. Let's see, that 8-year-olds with no other political rights should be able to switch genders. Again, just an arbitrary thing. Anybody should be able to be... Yeah, why does trans... what does transness have to do with the economy, other than the fact that trans people are denied loans, and therefore the economy gets worse because people are being denied the chance to, participate within it. That obesity is society's fault for stigmatizing fat rather than a medical issue, or rather it's society's fault for stigmatizing it rather than encouraging healthy behavior. I think stigmatizing anything, except perhaps fascism and those kind of, this kind of weird, anti-intellectual stuff is not very helpful. But I don't think stigmatization is good so much as encouraging the better outcome. So encouraging healthy society, yes, obviously fat people understand that there's a medical issue, except for that 1 or 2 person that said the opposite, that they use in every example because they're the only example of it ever actually happening. It's just crap. that hidden covert forces like racism, the patriarchy, etc., that operate subconsciously control society on a practically every level, and that's actually true. Yes, systems are the problem. It's not bad apples. It's bad apples spoiling the bunch because they create a terrible system of patriarchy and white supremacy, which exist in everything and can't be denied because whether you, even if the laws themselves aren't racist, focusing on lower income, urban areas, which typically are filled with POC and poor people, are targeted and over-policed and just exacerbating the problem rather than invested in and brought out of those problems. They're dug deeper into the hole. So yes, that is patriarchy and white supremacy, and again, not letting men talk about their feelings and everything like that. And the patriarchy affects men in the same, badly as well as it affects women. It doesn't just benefit men; it also causes problems. But it causes problems for them too, because it's just a problem. It's not the way to do things. Men aren't better than women. Everybody is equally, you can't judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, and you can't judge a bird on its ability to swim, although there are some good birds that know how to swim very well. But you can't say a penguin is a bad bird because it can't fly, and you can't say a hawk is a bad bird because it can't swim. It's just like, or you can't, there's fly, it's just, don't judge a goldfish on its ability to climb a tree, and extrapolate from there. Okay, hold on, there's more though. So yes, number 12, speech can physically harm people. Free speech harms minorities through hearing offensive opinions. This is completely mischaracterized. Speech can harm people because it implies violence, even if it isn't direct violence, but also it can. But being offended isn't so much the problem as having as people who view others as less than them for whatever reason, whether it's racism or sexism or bigotry of any kind. They imply violence with their words, and of course they have the ability to have more free speech than others. And I think the solution to this is, of course, context. Education, I think free speech is very important. Everyone should be pro-free speech, but not in every context. Free speech should be allowed in certain areas, but other areas need to have certain limits so that other people can be more free, because saying no blanks allowed, having the free speech to say that, or saying fire in a movie theater, cause problems. However, you can shout fire when not in a movie theater. It's just all depends on context. Number 13, that arguing that you are not racist, QED, makes you racist. This was the argument of White Fragility, a best-selling book that only is good in that the title shows that those in power are often fragile because they think that any criticism is the same as being canceled, and I mean they obviously are hurt more offensively than minorities are by certain speech, because they think that they're being canceled just because somebody disagrees with them or calls them, maybe says, hey, maybe you should think about what you say, or that you should understand that you are a very privileged person, because being white is a privilege. It's the same way. It's not the same thing, but it's like being white versus being a minority person of color can be an advantage in the same way that I am advantaged no matter what color I am or gender or sex I am over somebody who is the same except they have a broken foot. I would consider me to be privileged enough to not have a broken foot, although having 2 working feet, while technically a privilege to those who do not have it, is more of a standard that I think that, but that's the whole problem, is that everybody, that's why equality of opportunity is important and not equality of outcome. Equality of outcome is making sure that everybody has a broken foot to compensate for the people who have a broken foot, whereas equality of opportunity is trying to heal those with broken feet. Equality is everyone has a pair of shoes. Equity and equality of opportunity is everybody has a pair of shoes that fit them or that they like. You have to add that detail, otherwise it's not helpful. Equality isn't equality of outcome nobody wants. Equality of opportunity is important. 14, that one's identity is more important in debate than one's ideas. That's completely wrong. That's just, no, that doesn't make any sense. Ideas are the most important. however, most important thing, however, one's identity can, contribute to their views, and in some certain contexts may be important, because if I'm, a rich white landowner, I don't think I can really speak for, black homeless people, who are also obviously poor, because I am not them. So, I can't, certain people can't speak on others' behalfs, even if their ideas are generally good. The best ideas are generally going to come from the people from which you're talking about. You shouldn't exclude people from conversations that talk about them. If you, what is it? It's like, don't talk about us without us is the phrase. Don't talk about people without them. Let them, but also you can contribute from your perspective, but understand that you can't have the perspective of somebody that you aren't. So this is absolutely false. Yeah, that to put modern left-wing positions in, and have that one's identity is more important in debate than one's ideas, is just straight up just straw man. That's just straw man. Capitalism is an inherently racist and oppressive organization that brings harm to minorities. That's true, it does. And minorities don't just mean colored minorities, it means economic minorities. Capitalism is much more of a hindrance than an opportunity to those who do not have capital. And if you don't have capital, it's much, much harder to get capital than it is for somebody with capital to expand their capital. And capital doesn't just mean money, it also means, business, housing, your stuff that you own. It's things that you can use to make money. Your credit is a form of capital when used for loans and things like that. If you can't get a loan, it is oppressive. Capitalism is inherently oppressive and technically racist, because a lot of people in capitalism, there have been histories of redlining and racial things, which is why, we say that there are, systematic racism exists, because while the laws don't specifically exclude people by their gender or race identity, it puts those people typically in lower places of minority power and puts laws that, it's just as illegal for a billionaire to live under a bridge as it is for a homeless person. But it doesn't really, being illegal to live under a bridge as a billionaire, you just don't live under the bridge. You don't have to. But if you're homeless, that's the only time that you would have to. So the only time that law comes in is for homeless people. So just because it's not explicitly targeted, it is implicitly targeted, or at least has the outcome of much worse things happening to minorities of all kinds under capitalism. So most of those are just straw men. You could argue that these are good or moral positions, but you can't argue that by the standards of 10 years ago. What does that have to do with anything? These are remarkably radical positions. Also, and again, most of them are wrong. These are remarkably radical and also pretty stupid, I agree, but they're also not what people are saying. Also, these aren't minority opinions. Influential center-left sites like CNN or New York Times believe them. I mean, again, but they all are pretty... they benefit from rainbow capitalism. They benefit from capitalism incorporating critiques of capitalism without actually critiquing or doing anything about it. They're still paid for by ads. They still have to sell time and sell you ideas. So they don't benefit from just from critiquing capitalism. I mean, if they became a co-op, that would be rather interesting if those places did that, but they are owned by somebody and they have to make money for their shareholders. P.S. This should not be radical for me to say on my part. I am merely listing a compilation of current popular opinions, which you are mistaken on. So you can't, you can't really speak because you're for these people, because again you're mischaracterizing them. These are liberal and strawman positions. Some of these, again, the first three not so bad, but again they are explained, or they're not explained, and they're written pretty badly. And I mean, after that, 8-year-olds should be able to switch genders. Yeah, anyone should be able to switch genders at any time, however they feel. Gender is a social construct. Sex is entirely separate, and nobody argues that they're the same thing. But they like to pretend that they do. But these people what I fallist. I don't even know how to pronounce this guy's name. What if atheist? I don't know. What if atheist? What? No, but it's I don't know. This guy. What if all this tea? What if all, I don't know. What if, anyway, whatever. What if? I'm going to call you What If A. So What If A here just doesn't understand what he's talking about. Yet he apparently is some kind of historian, so I just don't understand. But he's a historian who is rather, neo-libertarian and right-wing, because he thinks that it's just the government and liberals that are causing all these problems, when it's mostly capitalism and liberal critiques of capitalism instead of leftist critiques of capitalism, and focusing on the liberals and turning them into straw men. So taking the already, not true critiques, I mean, some of them, again, are, and then twisting them and strawmanning them to make them look completely silly, and ignoring the actual critiques is why we don't get anywhere, because
a lot of this comes from
you're not actually helping
postmodernism.
anything.
This is an ideology created in the 1960s by dejected French intellectuals who couldn't come to terms with Marxism's failures, and so effectively said that people weren't doing the
He's just a Jordan Peterson guy. He just thinks that, why is America crazy now, postmodernism? So absolutely not. I mean, this is only halfway done, and there's probably something else in here that's useful, but I just don't see what else there can be. If somebody wants me to do a part 2, let me know. I'm going to move on to the next one. So it should be on random. It says that this one is going to be next, but let's see if it actually is. So, all right. I will watch this, The Fall of the American Dream, if it actually
Whatever happened to the
makes sense. But it's not, because it's not actually shuffling them. Okay, now it is. Alright. So, oh boy. Looks like Denmark government knows smart men won't date women. Oh boy, more anti-SJW shit. Better Bachelor. This one has subtitles.
Guys, welcome to Better Bachelor.
Oh my gosh. This guy. Alright, well, I can already tell that I'm not gonna like this. But we'll see. Alright.
My name is Joker, and tonight we're going to be talking about the Denmark government is begging men not just to please sleep with women. I have to be careful with my thumbnails because Big Mama YouTube is always keeping an eye out for naughty words that
that are incorrect and mischaracterizing the problem.
don't like. It's actually begging men to please sleep and get pregnant, the feminists. Yes, they want the womenists, the girl power movement. They're having a hard time getting men up for the occasion to be with them, and we're going to talk about that just a little bit.
Denmark government begs men to please sleep with women. Alright, when is this? This is March 2nd. Does he have a source? Alright, so here we go. So, let's see. The Guardian. Falling sperm counts threaten survival. What causes falling sperm counts? From what I understand, climate change and a lot of other things. Let's see. Falling sperm counts, changes to sexual development are threatening human survival. You know what? I'm done. I just did that whole long thing about what if blah blah blah, so whatever.